Welcome to episode 14 of the Going for Broke Outdoors podcast, a podcast by an outdoorsman for other outdoorsmen. I'm your host, Jeremy Gillespie. In today's episode, we catch up with Jake Vollink. You may recognize the name from Jake's many appearances on Midwest Whitetail's Great Lakes Regional Show. Jake is one of those guys who flies a bit under the radar, but is an absolute killer. Jake has taken several great bucks in his highly pressured home state of Michigan, and he has also found consistent success on his archery deer hunts in Wyoming. In today's podcast, Jake and I discuss his early season tactics in the West, early season tactics in Michigan, lessons learned from filming as a cameraman and as a self-filmer. We also discuss social media, haters on social media, and burnout. There are a lot of great takeaways from today's episode, and I really enjoyed my conversation with Jake. Jake and I actually recorded this podcast about 2 weeks ago in late August. Today is September 10th, and since this recording, Jake actually shot a great early season buck in Wyoming, so congrats, Jake. Awesome buck. I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank everyone who has been tuning into these podcasts. The downloads are steadily increasing, and the YouTube subscriber count is ticking up as well. If you haven't already subscribed and you enjoy this podcast, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on the latest episodes. I'm trying to get on a more regular podcast release schedule, but with hunting season in full swing, I'm not quite ready to commit to a regular release date just yet. Today's podcast is brought to you by Stealth Outdoors at www.stealthoutdoors.com. Visit the Stealth Outdoors store to outfit your mobile hunting setup with some silencing gear. Many states' archery season openers are just around the corner, and this is going to be your last chance to upgrade your mobile hunting setup before the opener. There's not a better product on the market for eliminating unwanted noise from all your gear. Stealth Outdoors manufactures an incredibly durable product for a great value. Designed from the ground up with a mobile hunter in mind, Stealth Outdoors manufactures climbing stick wraps, cam buckle covers, platform cable wraps, and stealth strip rolls for all of your miscellaneous silencing needs. Again, head on over to www.stealthoutdoors.com to place an order today. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Backwoods Mobile Gear at www.backwoodsmobilegear.com. Backwoods Mobile Gear produces an array of products to completely customize your mobile hunting setup. Backwoods Mobile Gear's product line includes climbing aiders like their multi-step aider and Versa aider. Climb higher using the same amount of climbing sticks with climbing aiders at a fraction of the weight of an additional climbing stick. Backwoods Mobile Gear also offers a variety of AM steel rope solutions from daisy chains for climbing sticks to AM steel gear hangers. Replace those bulky straps and hunt-ruining metal cam buckles with buckleless and lightweight AM steel products from Backwoods Mobile Gear. Check out Backwoods Mobile Gear at www.backwoodsmobilegear.com if you want your setup to be lighter, to take you higher, and to keep your gear tighter. What do you get when you combine a prototype machinist who also happens to be a big buck serial killer named Dan Infalt with state-of-the-art manufacturing techniques, the highest quality materials, and innovative designs that have been engineered, field-tested, and refined to perfection by a group of the best mobile hunters on the planet? You get huntingbeastgear.com. www.huntingbeastgear.com delivers cutting-edge products including Beast Gear climbing sticks with weight reduction holes designed to deliver incredible durability in a lightweight stick. Beast Gear climbing sticks also feature non-staggered inline stacking and double steps, all in a 2.2-pound package including the fastening strap. And new for the 2021 season, HuntingBeastGear.com has released the game-changing Beast Gear Hang-On Tree Stand. Designed from the ground up to be the ultimate hang-on solution, with 4 years of prototyping, testing, and refinement, the Beast Gear stand features a 16-inch wide by 29-inch long platform, and it comes in at an incredible 6.8 pounds without compromising strength or durability. The Beast Gear stand is finished with a durable anodized coating and features grade 8 hardware, high-quality Delrin washers, beast buttons, and adjustment knobs. For more details and to place your order, head on over to www.huntingbeastgear.com today. Now, on to the podcast. Hey, Jake, thanks for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I had a busy work day, but just getting set down now, so should be a good night.
Hey, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me on the podcast. You're a guy that I took notice of on the Hunting Beast as one of those guys that was consistently getting it done, but flying a bit under the radar. And that's probably because you seem like a real humble guy and you weren't posting a whole lot. So I want to get started today by asking you two simple questions. And the first one is, how old are you?
I am 34 years old.
And the second one, and I do this mostly for the audience, is how many bucks have you shot to date?
Oh, I don't have the exact number, but I have I think we're up to 18 shoulder mounts maybe on the house. A few of those are my wife's, and then a lot of we do plaque mounts and European mounts. So I would imagine I'm somewhere around $35 maybe for somewhere in there. I would think something like that. I'm not real sure.
Yeah, well, one, that's good that number doesn't come to the top of your mind. I think, like I said, shows you're a humble guy. And two, the reason I ask that is for people that aren't familiar with you. You know, you're not probably a household name like a Dan Infalt or John Eberhart, and they might be wondering, who the heck is this guy and why should I listen to him? But from what I've seen online and what you just said there, you're getting it done consistently on good bucks and in multiple states. So I'm excited to have you on today and talk some of your experience and tactics.
Yeah.
So we're going to get started, just a little more background. Tell me a little about yourself, where you're living, what state, and how'd you get started in hunting, and how long have you been hunting?
I live in West Michigan. That's just the general term of it, but it's near Grand Rapids. And I've basically lived here my whole life, just grew up down the road of 5 miles from where I built my house now. And so, my dad started me into hunting when I was really young, for just like plinking around the house with BB guns and 22s and things. And then in Michigan at the time, I was allowed to start bow hunting when I was 12. And so I did that and started gun hunting when they allowed at age 14, and that's when I shot my first deer when I was 14. So I've been hunting. I've been hunting like birds and rabbits since I was probably 8 years old. I'm 34 now. So, and and my dad kind of got me into it. He was the biggest kind of influence of my early hunting. He's a big hunter, but he doesn't really do much out of state or anything. It's kind of just on the few properties we have permission around here where we hunted until I got old enough where I started going on my out of state with friends and things like that.
Okay. No, great. Appreciate the background there. And so we talked the other night, just had a little brief conversation about some of the things that we were going to talk about on the podcast today. And one of the things that you brought up, and I want to get this early on in the podcast, was you told me a story about a mule deer that you shot that made you a bit unpopular. And I think one of the worst things that we can do as hunters is trash on some other guy's hunt or his trophy or his experience. So I'd like you to tell the story of that hunt, how you felt during that hunt, and then how people reacted afterwards.
Yeah, it was actually just last year, so it's the current hunt. And I did get on a pretty good sized deer earlier in that day. It was still early in the hunt. I think it was only maybe our second day. But I had never shot a mule deer. I was really hoping to shoot one out west that year, and got on a nice buck earlier, and the stalk just didn't work out. He ended up bedding down, and we didn't see him, and it got up, took off. But later on that evening, we set up in a tree stand over a water hole, and had a buck come running into the water, and I drew as it was getting downwind to me, and I could just see it was like a tall buck, a tall mule deer buck, so I shot it, and I could see blood coming out right away. I knew I had killed it at the time. And it's just like a tall 2x2, tall 4-point mule deer. And we were all excited. It was a bunch of buddies that really don't, it's not by any means any kind of size, going after size with these buddies. It was all about having a good time and having an adventure. So I think most of my buddies were more excited than I was, and I was excited. It was a fun deal. But yeah, just the amount of feedback I got when I got back home, and a lot of just negative comments that basically you hear through other people. No one says anything directly to you. It just surprises me how much people care about what other people shoot, what other hunters, see in their mind as a trophy or something that they want to take, and it suits them, but yet, another person, they don't care for it or whatever. They think, he could have waited or whatever, and it affects them, and so they have to mention it to other people. So that's kind of the gist of that story. It just kind of makes me firm, and even more firm in my, feelings of shoot what you want. I get like growing big deer too. I try to shoot 4 on one side or whatever around here. I can try to pass a lot of smaller deer, but I'm not gonna dig on someone that does. And again, I may have in the past too, where it's like, what? You shot that? And then, yeah, everyone does it. And then you think about it and you're like, no, I mean, it's their tag, that's how I feel. Well, it's your tag. You should, ultimately decide whatever suits you is what you could shoot,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we've got a real similar first mule deer with a bow story. I shot a 2-year-old mule deer, and it was the first mule deer I'd ever shot with a bow. I'd shot one with a rifle previously, but it was a young deer. I knew it was a young deer, but I was hunting on the ground. I didn't have a blind or anything, and it came in, and I was kind of still hunting through a cottonwood bottom and ended up shooting it at 8 yards. And it was one of the more fun hunts that I've ever had, and kind of got some of the same stuff. Like, we're in Montana now. Why'd you shoot that little deer? And it's like, well, it was a lot of fun. So
yeah,
I just want to bring it to the point, and I know a lot of people are listening, and maybe I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's a lot more to a hunt than inches of antler. And I think if we start heading down that path as hunters, we're in for a lot of disappointment. So that's my soapbox for this topic. I just I'd like to encourage everyone that's listening to do 2 things for me this fall. The first is have fun, and the second is to keep your social media comments positive, and especially for younger hunters, right? And man, there's nothing that drives me crazier than to see some grown man trashing on some 12, 14, 16-year-old kid's deer. Like, that drives me nuts.
Yeah, I agree. And then also you get the people that do, if they do shoot a smaller deer, they'll say, you get the, well, that's just a stupid spike, stupid 6-point or whatever. And that kind of irritates me too, because I think you should shoot what makes you happy,
Yeah.
If you're saying the deer is a scrub or whatever, you're not happy with it, well, then you probably should have let it go if you're not happy with it, But if you're internally happy with it, well, there you go. You just don't have to call it,
Sure.
You mean your own deer, that does kind of irritate me, just because you do hear that every now and again where they'll shoot a deer and, just kind of trash talk their own deer. But I assume that's mostly because they don't want to admit, that they shot a deer that, is the public standard is not up to that, and they're trying to kind of make up for it, I guess, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd speculate a lot of that comes from what we just talked about. They're scared of people trashing on them. So it's like, well, if I trash on my own deer, then nobody else will.
Yeah, get out in front of that.
Yeah, which is too bad. So speaking of kids, talk to me about your early years hunting, and let's say from the time you started, what sounds like, let's talk deer. You were 12 years old, and talk to me about some of your experiences then up till whatever time you started chasing bigger bucks and kind of cut it off there.
Yeah. So my first year, I hunted real hard and real close to my parents' house, actually, like close enough I could pretty much watch what they were watching on TV if they had it on, only a few, probably 60 yards behind the back of my parents' grass were cut off into the woods. So it was, I hunted hard. I hunted almost every day I could. I've seen 2 deer that year, a doe and then a tight rack buck, and I missed them both. Just coming in, shooting what I shouldn't be shooting. You don't know. Like,
sure.
I look back on it, and it is so much that you don't know in your first couple of years when you're 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to replace those for I still remember him like it was yesterday. That was a long time ago. But then when I was 13, I did the same kind of thing. Only had a couple opportunities that I didn't. Smaller deer that I did not capitalize on. I think I missed one when I was 13. 14, I shot my first buck. It was a 3-point with a rifle, and that was in like northern Michigan. We were at our cabin for opening weekend, and my dad shot a buck on opening day. My brother shot a buck opening night, and then I shot that buck on the second morning of season. And so we had 3 deer on the pole up there, which was really cool. That was pretty memorable. And then the next year after that, I was 15. I shot my first buck with a bow, and that was a pretty nice 9-point especially for the time, and then for the area. It was nice, and I double lung that real good blood trail. And my dad had been hunting close to me, and he heard a crash, so he kind of knew what was going on, but I didn't. I was still like, I think it looked perfect right on the front shoulder, but once we got on that blood trail, it was like red carpet right to it. That was kind of probably what hooked me the most.
Sure.
More in line with trying to do it with bow. So.
Do you remember shooting that deer in the moment, or did you get the blackout buck fever?
No, I remember it came in with a whole pile of does. I seen the does coming in. I wasn't going to shoot a doe, so I was letting them come by me, and they were about probably 5 yards from the base of my stand, and I think there was 7 or 9 does. It was an odd number, but I think it was like 7 does that all come through, and then he was the last deer, and also I looked down, he's right underneath me, 5 yards away, and then I was able to draw on them with all them deer there. I still don't, because I was in an old wooden ladder stand. It was like 12 foot off the ground, and I still don't know how it all came about, where I got drawn with 8 deer standing, within 10, 12 yards from my stand. I think he was probably at 10 yards when I shot him. And yeah, I remember that. My fletching's sticking out just barely, and yeah, he wheeled around and cracked them off. And yeah, I remember the whole thing. It was pretty exciting, that's for sure.
Yeah, you never forget the first couple, especially the first buck.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So what age were you when you started deciding to pursue a little bit bigger animals?
Yeah, it's probably when I was I think it was like when I was 19 or 20. I went on a bear hunt with a couple of my buddies into Ontario, and that was fun. We both shot bears right away and just fished the rest of the week. And then after that, I think we went out of state every year after that. Started in Missouri. Didn't have any luck killing anything there, but we had good encounters. And then I think I did that until my honeymoon. I went out west with my wife for our honeymoon. And then I shot a nice velvet deer in Wyoming for our honeymoon.
I might get you in trouble here if you don't know the date, but what year was that?
That was 2011.
Oh, you passed. Your wife will be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just had our anniversary in August. So yeah, it was relatively recently. So yeah. 10 years.
10 years. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So when you first started going after bigger deer, either in Michigan or out of state, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had, and how did you get over those hurdles to start finding success?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of challenges. I still, even when I started going out of state, you'd look back on what little I knew about, I don't know how to describe it, but like how to, essentially pinpoint different areas to set up on deer with wind and thermals. There was none of that. I mean, I'd play the wind a little bit while I was there, but I remember some access routes. I got busted by a real nice buck because he, come down. I walked in on a trail that he ended up taking, to get to me, and he smelled me and took off. And there's just all kinds of instances like that where it's like, man, you look back on it and it's like, well, if I set up on this side of the ridge, that thing would have been well within range of me, for a buck that I had seen at 100 yards or whatever. He was on the leeward side or, skirting the a hard edge cover type deal, going from CRP to some woods, and I was set up well inside the woods and just took the edge, that type of thing.
Okay. Well, we got time. Let's dive into some of the details. So you mentioned a few there, the cover, starting to pay attention to the thermals. So some of those things that maybe cost you deer early on, what are you looking for now? So those are some of the mistakes you made, but if you're going to a new spot now, either out of state or in Michigan, what are you really paying attention to? What's important to you these days to find a good setup?
Yeah, these days, me myself, I'm kind of looking for, well, I'm going for, depending on what time of the year it is, for one, some of these early hunts. We're going out west again this 2 weeks from now, and so I'm kind of focusing on different things then. But
are you going to Wyoming?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So talk about, because I know you have a lot of experience there. You've hunted there, what? Well, you said 10 years now, or maybe not every year, but a lot of that's been early season, correct?
Yeah. Yep. And I've bounced around a bit out there.
So what's your strategy in Wyoming for early season? What are you looking for, and what do your setups look like?
Well, you always keep an eye on water, or I do. Kind of check some water holes out if it's hot. That's always a pretty good bet. Any type of green fields is always a good draw out there to get some deer, at least get visuals on what you could be looking at.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. If people are listening from the Midwest, green fields might sound like a ridiculous suggestion, but but living out here, and especially this year, so you haven't been out here, I'm assuming, to the west this year, it is exceptionally dry, and even the green fields are getting brown, and there's very little water. So those are two real good tips right off the bat, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I want to mention that. So continue.
No, that's all right. Some of those fields can be pretty good. Some draws going down in there, and eventually you just have to cut the deer off, before they make it there. Hunting them when they're out there already is kind of pointless, because they just feed. They'll feed for quite a while, well before dark usually. So those two things. But if you don't have any green fields, like if it's all kind of some hills or mountainous more or less. I mean, if you're targeting whitetails out there, you're not necessarily in mountains, I guess you'd say. But then we've had good years with early acorn drop out there, and if you can find some acorns that are falling, I mean, that's a gold mine there if you can find it, if they're dropping in September. And then kind of for map scouting, I guess you're looking at some ridges and finger ridges of where they could be bedding, but it's pretty much all related to food and water at that time of the year. So if you got some of that type of stuff close, then you can kind of start dissecting some more and trying to figure out where they would be coming from, where you can intercept them. Is how I kind of look at it.
Yeah, and that area of Wyoming that you hunt, that's for just a generic term, hill country, and then they're probably up high and then coming down low to feed or water. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep, and you can hunt them pretty high. I mean, it just depends on what you like to do, and if there is some food available pretty close. Some of those deer live where they're feeding on browse and acorns. So that's that can be a little more difficult to pattern them, but they're kind of doing the same thing over and over.
Sure.
In those areas, they don't necessarily move off that pattern. It doesn't seem like until you either bump them or if they get your scent too much, they might adjust their way to get to wherever they want to go. But they're probably still going to go there for a while, at least. At least that's what I've run into.
Yeah, it's a little harder to spook them off out here than it is in Michigan.
Yeah. I played cat and mouse with that 10. I shot a velvet 10 point out there. That was on. So that was not on public land, but I played with him all week. I would get in the same draw with him, and then he would come on the other side of the draw, and then I'd hunt over there, and then he'd come on the side I was hunting on, and then he'd come over the top of the hill, and eventually the last night I was able to hunt. I walked out let's see, how did I do that? I walked out to one of my previous spots in the main draw. He had been coming out, and I think I even left my jacket on a fence post out there. I either did that the night I killed him or the next night, because those deer were watching me set up, or that's what I figured they were doing, because they would always adjust. And so I walked out to that original tree stand. I figured they watched me walk there, and then I let them, if they were watching me or if they had, a lot of times I could see them move back up the hill when I would get close, like they were that close. I'd move them back, and then they'd come out just before dark to get to the field yet, but they just adjust. So then I walked straight across, like there was a fence gap there, and I walked across there and got up on the next ridge over, because I figured he would come down the other side to get my wind or whatever. And he came down the spine of that ridge about 45 minutes before dark, and I was just off of it, and I shot him at 17 yards, avoiding where he thought I was,
Right.
But yeah, sometimes I guess you got to be a little creative. But that was a particular situation where that buck was, I couldn't hardly screw him up. He was betting in this one particular draw and just coming out every night and doing something a little different. But he needed to get to that field, and he was betting in that particular draw. So
right. Well, so we talked about Wyoming early season. 2 questions. Have you hunted Wyoming later in the year or mostly early season?
I gun hunted there 1 year, in November 1st. That was a little more difficult. There's a lot of people out there at that time.
So better luck early season for you?
Yeah. I mean, I like it. There's definitely struggles in early season. I did end up shooting a buck with my rifle on the last day out there as well. But, and we found them too. On the last day, we found where they weren't getting so much pressure, and we were in bucks. If we would have found that early, we would have been done really early too. So
yeah,
it's just kind of finding some deer that aren't pressured. I mean, a lot of it would be scouting too. We weren't able to scout. We got there on the opening day. We actually just slept in our car for like an hour and a half, and then started hunting as it got light out on opening day, and we didn't scout at all. So the first couple days we were kind of moving around a lot, and it was just running into people, and the deer had moved from where they like to hang out in the earlier season to November. They had moved a lot. There was snow on the ground, and they were changed up, so threw me a bit of a curveball.
That's one thing I've noticed out west, unlike Michigan where there's a lot of deer and deer pretty much all over. Seems like out here they're more confined to pockets, but when you get in a good pocket, like you said, there might be a lot of bucks, but you might cover a lot of ground to find that pocket first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yep. But once you find them, it seems like there's probably multiple. I mean, there can be at least. I'm sure you can get into the single large bucks that try to avoid everyone else, but it seemed like out there they were even almost more grouped up on like food sources and stuff in that time frame, just because it was so. We hit it kind of at a bad time too. It was really nasty weather for like cold and snow. It should be rut out there, in that general time frame. It's actually a little early for their rut, I believe, in Wyoming. But man, they were grouped up and on food. Or there's a couple private fields on opening day of rifle. There was like 200 mule deer just out in these private green fields, and I don't think more than 5 deer left that field the whole day. There was huge bucks out there. They just laid down in the middle of the field.
It's like they know.
Oh yeah. And we watched them one time, and the farmer. I don't know if they were hunting. Like maybe it was a hunting operation. I know that, but I don't know if they were hunting with some maybe handicap. I don't know. They drove a truck right through the middle of all these mule deer, and they were moving like 30 feet away from them. We never seen them shoot anything, but I'm like, holy cow! It was just amazing how many mule deer there was and how little they cared about the people around them.
Well, we talked about early season in Wyoming. What about Michigan or other areas that you're traveling to? Let's say pre-rut and rut. What are your favorite tactics there?
I've had some pretty decent success in Michigan here early season. 2 years ago, it was actually when the hunting public was in Michigan for their public land challenge, but we have a spot we hunt in northern Michigan as well, and I was up there that weekend hunting. I don't think it was anywhere. I don't know where they hunted, but it was just same northern Michigan, same type of looking stuff. And I had a couple trail cameras that I had soaking on some acorns I found that were the acorns were still in the trees at the time, but they had just started to drop when I set the cameras. And I got out of work at noon on Friday, and I went up there. I set a stand near one of my trail cameras. I didn't check it yet. I just set the stand and hunted. And I had a big, like a 2-year-old wide 6-point, like 15 inches wide, 16 inches wide 6-point come by. I grunted him in, and he came right in, and oh yeah, I got to shoot this up north. Right. So I shot him. And it was fun. I was by myself. It was pretty fun. And then I called my buddy, and he was on his way to his cabin up north, and so he swung in and helped me get it out. It was pretty fun. But I went to check that trail camera, and it was stolen. So I was kind of glad I got a deer and got out of there. It really, I don't know if there's other people in. Obviously, someone had been in there, but
sure,
to steal my camera. But yeah, I considered that one kind of lucky because I thought it was going to be like a little bit of an undiscovered spot, but obviously people had found that transition line also. So got that deer out of there, and then I spent the next day, I was going to leave mid-morning, come back home because I had that deer, and I scouted one other spot, and I think I could have killed a buck there. I jumped one, and then one stood up in some real thick brush and just walked off, and I'm pretty sure I could have killed one there. And I was like, I was debating whether to stay, try to hunt, or go home. And I had one more trail camera to check, so I went around, checked that camera, and I had 4 like nice bucks out of there, and like not nice for northern Michigan, Like,
sure. No, I understand. Living in Michigan, I know what you mean when you say nice buck.
So and it was shredded. Everything on the way to the camera was just shredded. There were acorns dropping, tons of ruts in there. I called my wife. I said, "Hey, I said I was coming home, but I got to hunt one more night." I
sure.
said, I'll have everything. I loaded the deer. I had all my camp stuff. Everything was in the back of the truck, and I hunted that night. And I shot a coyote. Coyote came in. I shot that. I went down, and I'm like, I'll never find my arrow in the dirt. So I went down, grabbed my arrow, got back up in the stand, clipped into my safety hunters, turned around, and there was one of the 8 points I had on camera was at 35 yards walking
no way
right in. I didn't even have my bow in my, like, nothing. I mean, I just clipped on. So I ranged him, grabbed my bow, and I shot him. And then I hit him just looked like back lungs. And he went out and he hunched up, and all of a sudden he just took off like full sprint. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't know, that looked weird. He had stood there for like 30 seconds. I mean, just sprinted away. I never had him do that. So I called my buddies, and they're like, oh, you got to back out. I'm like, not planning on this spot because it was Saturday night at this point. So I looked for blood. It started raining, so I'm like, this is worst case scenario. I called a dog tracker, and he said, because I didn't have real good blood. Where he stood, there was a bit of blood there, but when he sprinted off, it was just washing away as fast as I could look for it. But he said, oh, yep. He said, it sounds all right, but you got to wait till morning. So, oh boy. And I called my wife and said, well, I got to wait till tomorrow. So my dad and my brother-in-law and then my 2 buddies, actually, they drove up separate. They all met me up north the next morning, and we went and looked for it. And my two buddies, their brothers, they were going to go one way. I was going the other. I went into the thicket where he had bedded and where he came out of. I walked in there, and I'm like, there is no way. It was so thick. And all of a sudden I hear, oh, there he is. They walked about like 300 yards and directly to the deer somehow.
Nice.
Just on a circle pattern. But yeah, he had went right back to his bed. There's rubs all over the place.
Where was the shot? Where'd you end up hitting him?
Back in the lungs and liver. It was pretty much straight through the liver, and I probably caught a lung.
Okay.
And so it was probably a good thing I let him sit, but yeah, he was dead in the bed. Yeah, and so that was kind of an acorn deal, and just fresh sign.
Were those white or reds up there?
That was white oaks that were dropping at that time.
Okay.
And there is a lot of red oaks, but if you can find some of those isolated white oaks, it seems like that's what they kind of get them until they're gone.
Yeah, exactly. So I grew up and hunted a lot around East Central Michigan, and that's kind of where you start losing more of the whites and getting more reds. There's still whites around and even north of there, but that's why I was asking, because I know they thin out pretty good as you get north. So acorns, and then any other preferred early season tactics?
Yeah, acorns, and then a lot of times it is just trying to find some fresh sign. I know Dan talks about it as well. So yeah, probably a lot of people have heard, know this. I'm sure I've learned it pretty much from him. But finding that fresh sign early in the season is like that is really key, because the deer aren't making a lot of sign before that. There's, when you're finding sign that early in the season, it's not going to be 2, 3, 4 weeks old as easily as when you're finding it in November, and you could be seeing rubs that are from October 1st or whatever. So a lot of times, if you're finding real fresh sign, it's now.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And to go a little further, I'd say, and it's kind of self-evident, but it's harder to find the sign early.
Oh, yeah.
Because like you said, there isn't as much yet, but when you do find it, that's a really good sign that you're in the right area.
Yeah, that second buck in that northern Michigan spot. When I set my tree stand, I think I counted like 15 rubs from where I set my stand.
You were in the core area then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was a good little spot. It's kind of dried up now as everything changes. There's another tree stand. That buck actually, I say that there was another tree stand at the time when I shot it. I'd never seen it because I just went in with my stand on my back. I don't walk around and make sure there's no stands, within 80 yards of me or whatever.
Sure. You'd never hunt in Michigan if you did that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd be walking for a long time. But yeah, it was actually one of my buddies that found that deer when we were pulling it out. He goes, "Hey, look, there's a tree stand right there." He goes, "Did you know that was there?" I said, "No." It was actually, it was kind of where that title came from. It was probably 80 yards from where I had set up. And I said, "No, I had never seen it." And because we had noted when we first found that deer, he's like, "What the heck? It looks like a broadhead skimmed this thing's chest." And there was like a cut hair, for sure, something cut it, but it had to have been, it was a clean slice right across the thing's brisket, where it literally just cut a notch of hair out of his chest. So we only can figure, because I had that deer on trail camera like a day before October 1st, and this was like October 6th, I think, is when I shot him. And so in that time frame, that stand had definitely been hunted from like opening day on. So we can only assume that he had shot at that buck and just cut his hair. But it definitely looked like a broadhead had grazed him, and that was only 6 days into the season.
Yeah, it's a war zone out there.
It is. It gets pretty bad, but you can just kind of try to avoid some of that, but.
That goes to show, and we talked about it in Wyoming, and I think it's true in Michigan, maybe to a lesser extent, but I still think it's true. It's hard to bump a buck out of its area the first time. So even getting shot at with the stand 80 yards away, like that deer was still in that area.
Yeah. He was coming out of because I believe we found him in his, were really his core, like bedding area, because there was good sized rubs all through there where he had died. And yeah, it was perfect. He was kind of in a little bit of a ridge, like a secondary ridge, but it was a thicket, and they were living in there. And I assume he came out for acorns when probably the time he got shot at beforehand too. Just doing the same thing, kind of pulling up. That was their main food source right there. It was like 300, probably 200 yards from his bed where he could get into acorns.
Yeah, and like you said, those white acorns early season can be such a draw.
Oh yeah, yep.
Well, let's move into the pre-rut and rut. What's your preferred approach there?
When it gets kind of mid October and into later October, a lot of times it's kind of the time of the year where I am hunting closer to home, and a lot of times then it's just trying to get close to where you think they could be bedding, and trying to find fresh sign is always helpful. But a lot of the stuff now that I hunt around closer to home, because I'm not making my out-of-state trip yet, are just hammered with hunting pressure too. So like the public land closer to home here is so, I feel that it's so pressured, like even if you're finding sign, so you either find a real hot sign or the tracks can be helpful, trying to find a big set of tracks, but scrapes, trying to intercept them, and even the scrapes, it's a lot of nighttime activity on that. So yeah, it is kind of a little bit of a lull until you get into later October when they start moving around for some of those. But I've had good hunts, but it's fewer and far between for me. But yeah, a lot of times it's just trying to find the freshest sign. And yet, mid-October, that time frame, it's probably pretty much on trying to find some fresh sign, and it's also a time where I'm moving around. I'm trying to explore some new areas. Me and a couple buddies of mine do a lot of public land hunting, and we're always just trying to find new areas. And a lot of times you're just walking with your stand on your back until you find something decent. A couple times, me and the one of my buddies, we would walk whole loops in public land and then come back out and get back in the truck because there's nothing there. So
that's an important point though, and I think you learn that as you get more experience and you get older, is don't waste your time, right? If you're gonna walk through an area and there's nothing worth hunting, don't hunt there.
Yeah, I definitely learned that in the past couple of years, like probably the past 2 years really, because that's one of the big things that I'm trying to still pound into my brain is to, like Dan says, every hunt he sits, he is 100% confident he's going to kill a big buck. I used to have that all the time where I would hunt and I would not be confident at all that I was going to kill a deer. I'd be like, well, I did all this work and I got set up and I'm sweating my butt off, but this is definitely not a premium setup, but maybe something will come by, or maybe I'll see something where I can readjust. The past couple of years, I've really been trying to adjust my setups right away so I can, feel confident right away that I'm in a place I will be able to kill a deer if it comes in. And if not, I will tear down my set and redo it, put it in a different tree, adjust, go another 50, 60 or whatever you got to do. Yeah, it can be brutal when it's hot or when you're getting hot or frustrated. That will be the last thing you want to do at that time.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think that is important, especially if you're hunting like a run and gun, like a public land deal. And then for rut wise, yeah, a lot of times I'm just trying to maybe key in on some leeward facing hillsides, that type of thing, but also kind of your transition or try to figure out where the does are. And seems like if you find those family groups or those pockets of does, there's going to be a good chance there's a buck in the area. Find some big sign in that area or big tracks, and then it's usually what you're looking for. The scrapes and even some of those rubs, they're going to dry up when they're rutting hard. So a lot of times that might not be your best bet to be looking at that kind of sign.
It seems like, in my experience anyways, when the rut really gets cranking, a lot of the sign dries up during that period. And then, like you said, you're better off just looking for does.
But, I mean, last year, a few buddies did a hunt and we found a right away we found a lot of rubs in a small area, and it was not far from the road access, and a little piece of public. And my one buddy set up on there, had probably the hunt of one of the top hunts of his lifetime, and shot a really nice buck right off of that. And that was basically keying in on all those rubs. So if there's a real uh, constant pocket of sign, probably means that they spend a lot of time in that area.
Yeah. One of those overlooked spots, the hard to come by unicorn spots, huh?
Yeah, that was probably one of those. It was. I don't know if it was so obvious that people thought it was silly or what, but I would have to imagine there was plenty of people that seen that sign, didn't do anything about it, because by the sounds of it, it was pretty wild in there. So.
Well, yeah, the deer are obviously in the center of the woods. That's it.
Yeah. Yep. It's that in there.
Yeah, what's that saying? The deer are where they are, not where you want them to be.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit, Jake. One of the reasons I was excited to talk to you is you actually filmed for Midwest Whitetail, and it's the Great Lakes show for a while, correct?
Yeah. The Great Lakes was kind of the division of the local division of what I was on. How they divided it, I should say. Yep.
Okay. And then how'd you first get involved with that?
I just I was filming a bit for myself. With a buddy, and then we got on Michigan Whitetail Pursuit for a year. I ended up staying on with them while I was on Midwest Whitetail for a number of years, and they used my hunts also. But I submitted some video to Midwest Whitetail, and I got on I forget what they call it. It's like a developmentary staff or whatever.
Okay.
So, and then I think one year I filmed a few decent hunts on that, or we did. Me and Dustin, my guy I filmed with, my buddy, and they bumped us up to pro staff or whatever they call it. It's called pro staff or whatever. And so I was on there for a number of years, probably 8 or 9 years, I think, and I had some good hunts that panned out really good on video doing it for them.
Yeah, so wanted to talk about that. I know one of your most popular hunts, and that's still on YouTube and Midwest Whitetail, I believe, was a pretty interesting story. So why don't you go ahead and talk about that? Start with why you decided to hunt that location, and kind of describe the setup, and then tell us what happened.
It was probably the double that I shot 2 bucks in one morning.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that is one of the more popular ones on Midwest Whitetail. But we were down by our lease, and that was my hunting partner's lease. I was subbed onto that or leased from them. And southern Michigan, and we were hunting down a finger, kind of because the wind was wrong for a lot of the spots we had confidence in. But this spot was good. It's a good spot. It's kind of a go-to. There's a permanent stand there. And
when you say finger, was that like a ridge or a point of woods jutted into a field or a swamp?
Yeah, this is all like dead flat ground. It's just flat farmland. And this finger of woods connects a little like plot of woods, I guess you could say. Maybe, I don't even know, 40, 50 acres of woods. And then it's just a kind of a one strip of woods that goes all the way from there to the road to another bigger section of woods on the other side of the road. And the farmer at that time kind of would let his crops go a bit. You can see that on video if you do end up watching it, that there's a lot of foxtail and things in that cornfield. And we went down there just because it's a good transition. But once we got down there was acorns dropping there. I don't know if that's why they eventually did come into us. We did hear them tickling like antler in the morning. We could hear them, fighting, but I mean barely. Like, you'd listen real hard and be like, "That's got to be tines," that type of thing.
One of those things where you're like, is that my imagination?
Yeah,
or is that
yeah.
really happening? What time of year was this? What was the date?
It was probably October 5, I think.
Okay, early season.
And it was like probably 80 degrees out. It never cooled down even at night. I think it was like 75 the whole night. So we were in basically like long sleeve t-shirts, up there in the tree. But yeah, so we heard that and we grunted when we heard that little bit of tickling of the antlers, and then it was probably 10 minutes later we could hear one walking our way. So I don't know if they were coming just to transition, just to go through that area to get acorns, or if if they're curious and decided to make their way in. But the first one was like a clean. It's like a 9 point, I believe. It's kind of got that. The 9 point's like an inch or whatever. But he came in and gave me a 17, 18-yard shot, double lunged him, and as he did a half circle and went back the way he came from, and as he's running, you can see just on the bottom of the video, he kicks the deer that's behind him, which was a much larger. He doesn't score much more, but it's an old deer. He's got like 6.5-inch base. It's just a real gnarly 9, 10 point, 9 or 10, again with some small cheaters and stuff on it. But he comes to the exact same spot the first one came, and my buddy filming, he had filmed that buck many times throughout the summer and had tons of pictures of it. He goes, "That's the deer I'm after." And so we actually switched. I gave him the bow and I took the camera up there, but as we're doing this, he has no release. So it's like, no, it ain't going to work. Grab bow, like, make sure it was all right that I filled both my tags here. This is all happening in 30 seconds. I think from shot to shot, I think it's like 36 seconds. And so he gave me the green light, and I just ripped back, and that deer is on the move to leave, and I shot him and went right through his front leg bone into the off-side leg bone, and he takes off. And then we lose it, we're real excited for a while.
Sure.
We actually let him sit for a couple hours. We weren't sure on that second shot. We didn't want to bump. We knew the first one was dead. It looked perfect.
Yep.
Second one, it looked like it was hard to tell if I went straight shoulder or if I went through that shoulder and hit the offside shoulder, because the arrow is sticking out like halfway or whatever. And when he took off running, and we go back in there, and I track the first one, and when I find it, I can see the belly as I'm running up to it of the second one, about 5 feet behind the first one, and they died about
That's
5
just
feet
crazy.
apart. Yeah. So the whole thing is it's just the craziest circumstances, and if you don't really, there's no cuts in that video, no nothing there. I mean, it's how it happened, 30 some odd seconds apart, and they die right next to each other. It was just bizarre. But so somebody watched that YouTube video. I don't know who it was, like just some random person, and put it on let them grow thing on Facebook here in Michigan.
Yeah.
And this is just a side story, but people were just pissed because I filled both my tags in early October. But they were saying that,
going back to the haters, right?
Yeah. I had to quick touch on this because they were saying that second one, they're like, first one, beautiful buck. Second one, you should let go. And that second one, it was aged by my taxidermist just by rough tooth age, no due to slimy mating or whatever.
Right.
But it was 2 years old or whatever. So if the first one was 3.5, it was 5. He said it was either the first one was either 2.5 to 3.5, and the second one was 3.5 to 4, or it was 4.5 and 5 and 3. 3. So
right.
There's 2 years difference, and the second one. So the people that were shredding this, deer saying they should have passed the second one, it just kind of shows that really. And don't necessarily know what you're talking about if you're saying you got to pass the older deer,
Yeah.
Because they're saying it's smaller and younger. But yeah, so it was funny. They riled up all kinds of people. So I wasn't even part of that. So I'm trying to get on and look at the story to see what all the fuss was about, but they had taken it down. It got too heated. They took it down. So.
I actually had a deer biologist on from Penn State in one of my earlier episodes, and I asked him about any tips to age deer I thought a biologist might know, and he basically said you can tell a year-old buck and maybe a 2-year-old buck, and after that, he's like, even as a biologist, he's like, you're guessing after that.
Yep. I totally 100% agree because I find a lot of times people are guessing on age, and it's like, who knows,
Sure.
It's hard to tell from. There's so many variables. I just don't understand how you can be accurate on that. From diet to size. I had one in Wyoming had an abscess on his teeth. In his jaw, it went down into his jaw, and his whole one side was toast, like just flattened right out. But it's hard to say. I had the last year we were having our bucks done by one of the aging companies that cuts them.
Yeah, like Matson Labs or something.
Yeah. So we had them done by that.
Yeah, I've read, and I don't know for a fact, but I've read that some like control samples where bucks were raised from fawns to a certain age were sent in like a blind study to the labs, and even those aren't 100% accurate.
No, I read I think even maybe right off their website they say they're like 80% accurate or 60 or 70 or something. It's not even that great. It's cutting them. So yeah, you got to take it with a grain of salt, I think.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of variables.
Yep. Try to judge on body size and go from there. I guess like for live judging them. So if you don't want to shoot a 2-year-old,
right?
Don't shoot a lean buck. But yeah, I don't worry about that too much myself.
No, I don't either. Gets you excited, shoot it.
If they get me going, I shoot.
Right. So on the filming, trying to do a little more filming myself, so I'd be interested to hear what are some of your tips or lessons learned from filming. I believe you had a cameraman sometime and you self-film, so let's focus mostly on self-filming here. What have you learned, or what are some of your tips or best practices on that?
Yeah, I did a lot of filming for my hunting buddies too, and stuff like that. But self-filming, when I was on Midwest Whitetail, like Zach, Greg, and Aaron were on staff at Midwest Whitetail yet, and so when we would go out there, they taught me basically most of the to make it look good. They taught me all that, and I believe they actually have videos out on filming, so they are definitely good resources because I am just regurgitating what they told me. So,
appreciate your honesty.
yeah, I'm not coming up with the stuff, but yeah, just getting it set up on the right side. So if you're a right-hand shooter, you want your camera on the right side so you can have it on your release hand, so you're not trying to swap your bow over. Getting a controller. I never had one for self-filming, but a few of my buddies have a controller that controls your zoom and your focus right on your hand. It's very nice if you can swing that. It's helpful.
So for people that are listening, I believe you're talking, and this is a brand name, but like a VariZoom where.
Yeah, the one my buddy has there. Yep.
Yeah, the controller mounts on the end of your fluid head handle. That way you don't have to reach to the camera, and you can control what you just said about zoom and focus off those, right? And start and stop your recording too.
Yep, start, stop, and zoom, focus. Yeah, they're pretty simple, or you can get them pretty simple and very handy. Even when you're filming other people, I mean, it's nice. You're not having a hand right on the camera. And then, trying to get to where you can get a little B-roll or cutaways. It depends on what they call them, but everything before the shot. So they just want you to film everything. Like an editor is just, the more footage you have of a particular hunt, the better it's going to be, even if you think it's not going to be, if you think it's not going to be important, it's still, get to film it, and get a lot of shots of general area, scenery, that type of thing. Because if you're doing any type of interview, that kind of thing, editor is just going to play that over your talking, so you're not just talking right into the camera a lot of times.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And you see that in a lot of hunting videos where that's something that really makes a difference. And we'll say case A, you've got a guy that talks to the camera just on his face for 2 minutes, and that, people get bored of that. But B, let's say video B, you got 10 seconds of talking, and then you continue to talk, but it cuts to B-roll, and it's, birds or other deer, the landscape, whatever. And I think just that visual change keeps people a lot more interested.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. And then, they always preach before moving the camera, you want to give it 3-4 seconds of just record time, so they can cut it, they can edit, they can cut it and make it all flow, so you're not going right into a pan or right into any of your scenery shots. It kind of helps in editing. A huge key for anyone that's filming themselves and doing it all themselves is learn how to edit well, because I do not know how to do that. And if you can edit well and be proficient at it, I think that's a bigger step or farther ahead than being a proficient filmer. I mean, yeah, you can kind of screw some stuff up, but if you can make it look good in editing, I mean, that's a ticket.
That's where the magic happens.
I scabbed together a few of those videos I have on my YouTube channel, and that is about all I can do. So they make it look good when you send it away.
Yeah.
And then another thing I thought of too today is like thirds. They always want when a deer's moving. And once you kind of learn some of this stuff and realize what's going on, you pick it out in other videos and stuff. But keeping that animal in the back third of what you're filming. So if you're looking at your screen, there's essentially 2/3 in front of the animal. So if he starts jogging, or if you have to stop for a second, he can continue to walk in frame. If you have him in the middle, or you're constantly following him, or whatever animal you're following, you're going to lose. You're going to lose the shots, easier or whatever.
Sure, that makes sense.
They always kind of grid it off of, when they're doing their classes, they grid off the screen and show you where they'd like it.
Okay.
That definitely helps, and it makes it look a little cleaner when you're not. All of a sudden the deer walks out and you jump up ahead and try to get them back in there.
And then what about transporting your gear to and from the tree?
I always took just a general backpack for if I had a stand already set that I was going to go to. Some of my private pieces I hunt around here, I have stands set in general areas that are always consistently pretty good. So yeah, got your camera arm and base on the backpack itself. I had a backpack that would fit that all right in there, and then I have my camera in the case inside the backpack as well, and kind of get that all set up when you get out there. But as we were talking about the other night, it's the technology, I guess you'd say, the stuff they have out now is superior to what I had. I had a pretty big muddy base in the arm, and it just got heavy and cumbersome, and you can definitely get burned out with it. And that kind of goes back to filming cutaways and B-roll. Eventually, you'll get sick of doing that every time, and the time you don't do it, time you'll shoot a buck and not have anything. And trust me, I've tried to, on my own videos, try to add stuff. You cannot add stuff from other days. You end up taking it all. You can't match conditions and lighting, and everything has to be sequential. And that if you film an interview and it's a certain dimness out, and then all of a sudden it goes bright to dim again, that giveaway, you're just adding stuff at that point. So.
No, that's a good tip there, and it's kind of like when you forget your knife, that's the day you shoot a deer too.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So yeah, when I was doing it and having good videos that I was able to make, it is when you make a conscious effort to really just go over the top and film as much as you can. They definitely turn out the best.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit in our pre-conversation. Is it's important to have a plan, even if it's not the greatest plan, but how you're going to film, like you said, your initial footage, your intro, your B-roll, the hunt, your after. I've noticed a lot. So this is just lessons I've learned on my own in the past year is I always forget to film stuff afterwards too. So there's like, you need some sort of conclusion to your video, and that's easy to forget.
Yeah, definitely. I've done the whole garage interview at, 2 hours later plenty of times where it's like, yeah, so we got the deer and it's gutted out and hung up already, and here's the deer. You just forget. You get into kind of forgettable things, and yeah.
Get excited or taking care of it, and then next thing you know, yep, you're at home.
Yeah. So yeah, all that stuff comes into play when you're trying to make a decent production, and kind of to go along with that is if you're wanting to do filming and that type of stuff, I would encourage just the YouTube channel. Get good at producing, and you do a YouTube channel. Everyone thinks or everyone used to. I don't know how it is anymore, but like getting on pro staff and stuff like that, and you're doing it to get your content out, and that's the only benefit of it. I'd have people be like, oh well, I got these deer on trail camera, but they're nothing compared to yours, I'm sure, because you're on Midwest Whitetail, so you hunt all these good spots. I'm like, no, I got 10 acres that I hunt, and I got 5, bloody blinds from the neighbors that, are bordering every corner of this piece.
Sure.
It's just, you're benefiting, you're getting some, discounts on certain stuff, depending on what pro staff you're on. But you wait for the right time of the year, you're getting that same discount. It's like you're doing it to get your content out is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
If you do want your content on a big channel, on a decent sized channel or something, yeah, you can go for it. But if you're thinking you're gonna get paid or anything or get gear, anything like that, probably not gonna happen unless you're paying them for it. So
yeah.
Just
because you're on Midwest Whitetail doesn't mean you're best friends with Bill Winke, yeah?
No. Yeah, it kind of burned me out on that. Eventually, when I pretty much got out of filming and got out of that, when I would go to Wyoming, that was my vacation for the year, and that 9-point I have on my YouTube channel, it's one of the best total films that I got. It just pours, like you get a good blood trail of as it's running away. It was self-filmed, but it was pretty sweet. It's viewed way more times than my double buck on my YouTube channel. But,
yeah, I watched the video the other night of the Wyoming. That's a good hunt.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. But when I shot that one, I messaged he was an intern on Midwest Whitetail that was doing our editing. I messaged him. I got one down. It's self-filmed, and they were really big against, which that's part of it. They were really big against self-filming at that time, but they have since changed, is what I understand. But at that time, it was big against self-filming, so he was probably kind of turned off by that. But then I said, he said, "What about your dad?" And I said, "Well, my dad doesn't want me to film him. He's just enjoying the weekend or whatever, so he's just going to hunt, and I'm going to scout for him." And he goes, "Well, I don't know, but that's your job. You need to do that. That's your job." And that's kind of what turned me off. I'm like, my job?
All right. I'm on vacation.
Yeah, I'm using my time, I literally gained nothing out of this except, get to show my video on your channel, but it's definitely not my job. So
yeah,
that was about the time I said, I'm good.
Yeah. So what about going forward? I know that you have kids these days and you're probably busier than ever, but you got any plans to film again in the future, or are you burned out for life?
Yeah, no, I once you do it and once you get some good kills on video, it's awesome because you can watch them back. It's fun to have them for those memories, and they don't go away. And so I definitely, especially with the kids growing up, I'll definitely film again with them, and hopefully maybe put more on my YouTube channel or what have you. I have a pile of videos too that I should edit up that are good that would go well on there. It's just don't have time for it.
Well, we're talking about YouTube and your channel. If you want, go ahead and plug it. What's the name of your channel?
It is We Watch Drop. It's kind of an odd name, but it's like the drop is kind of what throws you off, but it's We Watch Drop.
So with just EM instead of THEM?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
No, and anybody that's listening, I watched the videos, and like I said, that the $2 in the morning and the Wyoming hunt especially are really good. So I enjoyed those.
Yeah. Those are kind of the better ones on there. Like I said, I got a couple of them. There was a tall brow 10-point I shot in Wyoming as well. That's on Midwest Whitetail, but it kind of I should edit that up too. He drops a bit and drops my string, but they kind of did the point and then the slow motion where my arrow impact is, and you can see how much the deer drops on that video.
Yeah.
They leave the point on there. It's kind of amazing to see what they do. But yeah, any of the other videos, you can just like search Jake Vollink, Midwest Whitetail, and they all come up on Google or whatever.
Yeah, and if anyone that's wondering, last name is Vollink, correct?
Yeah.
So, Yep, Jake Vollink.
So yeah, I have a few videos I should add on there, but then as my kids get older, my two oldest, they have a girl and boy that are 7 and 6, and when my oldest Sage, she shot a deer last year, and Jace did. Jace shot one with a crossbow during gun season, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Sage shot one. She got couldn't let her brother outdo her, so she ended up shooting one with a 350 in gun season, and that was my two favorite hunts from last year by far and away.
Oh sure, yeah, getting your own kids out.
Yeah. So, and Michigan has like a mentor program, and so I was in the blind with them, but yeah, they did awesome. It was definitely an experience. But this year we're gonna do it a little different. We're gonna try some up north and northern Michigan. Trying to, I kind of go back to some of what Dan says on the podcast, because I struggle with that. Like, how do you get them out there? They showed interest in going, so and one of the spots I hunt during late season that you can shoot a doe any night. They yard up there,
yeah.
And so that's where they both shot those deer, and so. But I'm kind of on the bandwagon of, that's not going to be what goes on every year. We're not just going to go, one day and let you shoot one of the does that comes out, or a buck if it came out. We're going to start hunting and kind of going to start teaching them how to look for sign, that type of thing. Try to make it more of an experience, like I did when I was younger. We'd go up for that youth season up north, and man, remember it like it was yesterday.
Oh, it's good. It's good to get the kids involved early, but it's also good to teach them the skills and the woodsmanship. So when they're out there trying to do it on their own, they're equipped with those skills.
Yeah, again, I struggled as well when I was younger, and Dan talks about that too. Just running to the woods and trying to get after anything he can find. I did that to a certain extent. I didn't have vast expanses, and we tried to keep the deer, kind of just running around.
Right.
But the struggle of trying to see deer and shoot my first deer, it took me a little bit 3 years to shoot one with a bow, and I missed plenty of deer in that time.
Yeah.
And just the struggles like that. That's probably what hooks you, really makes you avid.
Yeah, if you're into that stuff, especially achievement, and if it's not too easy, then I think, but it's still attainable, then that,
yeah,
I think accomplishing something like that's difficult but not impossible gets a lot of people interested.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, hey Jake, we're running up on a little over an hour and 15 minutes here, so probably wrap it up for today. I want to thank you for your time and all the knowledge that you shared today. And I also want to tell you good luck this fall. And if you get any of those videos edited and posted, let me know, or let people know on the forum so we can check those out as well.
Yeah, we'll do it. Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, good luck to you as well.
All right, man. We'll catch you later, and we'll be following along this fall.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Yep. Bye.